Okay, ma'am. Basta man Mars, start na ko, Mars.
Start na.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we are the Group 8, and our report for today is about the authoritarianism and martial law period. So it was presented by Lucagbo Nicole Chloe, Kuyag Francis Jacob, Kilaton Ron Vincent, Galpo Mercy Jane, Elio Rocky Elmer, Soriano Jessica, Amparo Ivy Rose, and myself, Bobuli J. So, last meeting, we already discussed the biography of Marcos Sr. and how he became a president of the Philippines. So, today, let's have only a little recap before we proceed to the next reporter. So, a little recap about in 1935, no, in 1965, Marcos became the 10th president of the Philippines. And just 2 years later, in 1967, the Congress approved the idea of revising the 1935 Constitution. So was critical move because it allowed Marcos to lay the groundwork for extending his stay in power and restructuring the government system. And in 1969, Marcos became the first post-independence president to be re-elected in the Philippines. His campaign was marked by the extravagant spending, much of it reportedly coming from the public resources, which contributed to the country's economic crisis and inflation. So, at that time, government vehicles and also the funds, which is from the taxes, were allegedly used for his campaigns, events, and voters' influence. So, in short, na vote buying. So, this over expenditure also led to major student protest and public discontent, which increased unrest. So, um, this report, the next topic would be discussed by Mercy Jane Galpo. Thank you.
Okay, so to continue, during World War II, he was an officer with the Philippine Armed Forces. Marcos later claims of having been a leader in the Filipino guerrilla resistance movement were a central factor in his political success. But a U.S. government archives revealed that he actually played little or no part in anti-Japanese activities during 1942 to 1945. So, um, during that World War II, Ferdinand Marcos was indeed part of the Philippine Armed Forces. Later, he was claimed that he was a hero who led guerrilla forces. But then, um, U.S. government, according to their records and investigations, it shows that many of these claims were false or exaggerated. So, for example, in 1986, the U.S. National Archives revealed that the guerrilla unit Marcos claimed to have led the Ang Mga Maharlika was not officially recognized as a real guerrilla group by the U.S. Army. They also found that many of the medals he said he earned, like the Distinguished Service Cross and Silver Star, had no official record. So, for example, in the 1986, the New York Times reported that the U.S. Army records found no foundation for Marcos' claim of being a guerrilla leader. So this seriously damaged his image as a war hero and revealed that he had used false stories to boost his political career. So, in simple terms, Marcos said he was a World War II hero, but trustworthy document shows that he wasn't really the hero he claimed to be. So, and then Marcos won and was inaugurated as president on December 30, 1965. In 1969, he was re-elected, becoming the first Philippine president to serve a second term. during his first term, he had made progress in agriculture, industry, and education. So he is indeed elected as the president of the Philippines in 1965, and he officially took office on December 30, 1965. He ran under the Nacionalista Party and won with the promise of improving the infrastructure, boosting the economy, and fighting corruption. And then he was re-elected in 1969, becoming the first Philippine president to serve a second term, which was allowed in the 1935 Constitution at the time. So his achievements during his first term on 1965 to 1969, Marcos focused on modernizing the country. First, a major of his major efforts is was agriculture. So Marcos launched the Masagana 99 program in the late 1960s, which aimed to increase rice production by teaching farmers modern farming techniques and giving them access to credit and fertilizers. At first, it helped increase rice output, but then um, it didn't sustain, and then it makes the Philippines nearly self-sufficient in rice. And then second, infrastructure. He invested in building roads, bridges, schools, and hospitals, which earned him popularity, especially in rural areas. So projects such as the North Luzon Expressway or NLEX and cultural buildings like the Cultural Center of the Philippines or the CCP were started during or soon after this time. And then the third is in terms of education. Marcos expanded access to education, built new schools, and increased government spending on public education. Literacy rates improved as more Filipinos were able to go to school. The fourth is in terms of industry and economy. There was some economic growth due to government investment in infrastructure and industries. However, this growth was heavily financed by foreign loans which later led to debt problems. So for example, according to a 1969 report by the Philippine Free Press, Marcos administration built more roads and schools building in his first terms than previous administrations, helping many remote areas gain access to public services. However, this massive spending during his re-election campaign also contributed to rising inflation and economic troubles later on. And then, yet his administration was troubled by increasing student demonstrations and violent urban guerrilla activities. On September 21, 1972, Marcos imposed martial law on the Philippines, holding that communist and subversive forces had precipitated the crisis. He acted swiftly. Opposition politicians were jailed and armed forces became an arm of the regime. So the martial law under Ferdinand Marcos during his second term faced growing problems in in the country rather. So there were many student protests, labor strikes, and increasing violence from urban guerrilla groups like the Communist New People's Army or the NPA and the Moro separatist movement in Mindanao. The political and economic unrest created fear and instability. So during the declaration of martial law on September 21, 1972, Marcos signed Proclamation number 1081 placing the entire Philippines under martial law. He announced it publicly on September 23, 1972, claiming that it was necessary to stop the rising threat of communism, rebellion, and anarchy in the country. So, on during on Marcos, according to Marcos' justification, he said that communist and subversive groups were trying to overthrow the government. He also pointed that the alleged ambush of Defense Secretary Juan Ponce in Rile as a reason to declare martial law, though many believe that was staged to create a justification. So, to share what happened during martial law, first there was a suspension of rights. So civil rights were suspended. People could be arrested without warrants, and there was no freedom or of speech or press. And then next is jailing of opposition. So Marcos had opposition politicians, activists, and journalists arrested. Most notably, Senator Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr., many were detained without trial. So it happened also in his during the martial law, the military control. The armed forces of the Philippines, or the AFP, became an instrument of the regime. They enforced curfews, shut down media outlets, and controlled key government functions. And then consolidation of power. So Marcos ruled by decree, bypassing Congress. He also revived the constitutions in 1973 to to give himself more power and extend his rule beyond his terms. So, for example, according to the Amnesty Internationals, around 70,000 people were imprisoned, and then 34,000 were tortured, and over 3,000 was killed during martial law. So this period is widely regarded as a time of human rights abuses, corruption, and suppression of democracy in the Philippines. So as we all know that during martial law, um, even though it is a good idea, but then many some of his subordinates abuse the power wherein it bring chaos during the time. And then under martial law, the president assumed extraordinary powers, including the ability, as what I've said, ability to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. Marcos announced the end of martial law in January 1981, but he continued to rule in an authoritarian fashion under various. So when Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law in 1972, so as what I've said, he gave himself extraordinary powers. One of the most powerful tools he used was the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus, which means the government could arrest and detain people without needing to charge them with a crime or bring them to court. It allowed Marcos to silence critics, activists, and political opponents. So he is so powerful the time that no one can um wala is bikin sang makakontra kundi iarang yung voice ang mag-stand. So at the end of martial law, but not um, of dictatorship, Marcos officially lifted the martial law on in January 1981, nearly 9 years. So, but in reality, he continued to rule as a dictator. He wrote he rewrote rather the constitution several times, each time making sure he stayed in control. The military remained loyal to him and continued to suppress opposition. Press freedom and civil liberties were still limited, and then elections were often seen as unfair and tightly controlled by his regime. So the 1981 presidential election in June 1981, a new election was held for a newly created version of the presidency. Marcos ran again but faced only token opposition, meaning his opponents were either too weak, handpicked, or not truly challenging his power. So many of the real opposition leaders, like Ninoy Aquino, were in exile or prison. The election was widely criticized as a political show, and it shows not a fair or democratic process. So, as an example, is that according to Human Rights Watch and multiple historical studies, even after martial law officially ended, thousands of Filipinos continued to face arrest, harassment, and military abuse, especially in rural areas. So for example, the kilusan ng mga mamamayan para sa tunay na demokrasya or the KMTD and other documented continued censorships and political repression. So, a constitutional convention, next slide please. A constin asan mo to? A constitutional conversion was convened at the Manila Hotel. Its purpose was to write a new constitution that would meet the new challenges confronting the Philippine Republic that developed since it was formed in 1946. It was during the second term of President Ferdinand Marcos that the convention opened. Almost immediately, the convention became controversial because during his second term, President Ferdinand Marcos supported the idea of creating a new Philippine constitution. The reason given was to make the government more responsive to the changing needs of the country since the Philippines gained independence in 1946. So the purpose of the Constitutional Convention or CONCON was convened in 1971 at the Manila Hotel. So its goal was to replace the 1935 Constitution with a more modern one. The proposed changes were meant to address issues like economic development, social justice, and national security. So why it become controversial? The convention faced problems like first bribery scandal. It was discovered that some delegates were bribed to support provisions that would allow Marcos to stay in power beyond his second term. So this caused public outrage and damaged the credibility of the convention. Then second, the suspicion of Marcos' motive. So many believe Marcos was using the convention not to promote the country, but to legally extend his time in office. Under the 1935 Constitution, he was supposed to step down in 1973. So third is the martial law interference. When Marcos declared martial law in 1972, he used this as an excuse to speed up the ratification of the new constitution known as the 1973 Constitution under questionable legal and political processes. So, in 1972, a delegate named Eduardo Quintero exposed a bribery scandal in the convention, claiming he and others were offered money to support Marcos' interests. So this event, known as the Quintero Expose, became a major turning point that revealed how the convention was being manipulated. So the 1971 Constitutional Convention was meant to update the country's laws, but it quickly became controversial due to corruption, manipulation, and political interference. Instead of being a tool for national progress, it became a way to for Marcos to prepare the ground for one-man rule under martial law. And then the delegates concentrated more on speeches and giving them allowances before actually sitting down to discuss the provisions of the new constitution. Meanwhile, the peace and order situation brought about by the first quarter storm deteriorated with student rallies and other protests rocking the metropolis. The biggest scandal came when later delegate, as I said, Eduardo Quintero accused Marcos of bribing delegates to vote for a provision to extend the presidential term of office and to change the form of government. So the worsening situation outside the convention is that the first quarter storm on 1970 was a period of intense protests especially by students and activists who were demanding reforms and condemning corruption. Rallies, strikes, and riots become more frequent, especially in Metro Manila. The government's violent response to this protests only made the situation worse. So during the major scandal of Quintero expose, it revealed rather that there was a bribery attempt, and then Quintero publicly accused people close to President Ferdinand Marcos of giving envelopes filled with money to delegates. So the goal was to influence them to approve changes in the constitution, sorry, that would extend Marcos' times in office and change the form of government to a parliamentary system where Marcos could remain in power even after his term ended. So, in summary, instead of focusing on writing a better constitution, the 1971 Constitutional Convention was slow and corrupt. So, delegates were distracted by personal gain, and the Quintero expose revealed attempts by Marcos to bribe his way into staying in power longer. This event further weakened trust in the government and added to the unrest that led to martial law. Okay. Next, please.
Jessica, ikaw na mag-report.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Jessica Soriano. I will be discussing is all about Philippine martial law. Um, Martial Law Declaration 1972. President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law on September 21, 1972, citing the growing threat of communist insurgency in the country. Martial law, as outlined in the 1935 Philippine Constitution, gave the president extraordinary powers, including the ability to rule by decrees, suppress, suppress civil liberties, and control the military. Impact on the Constitutional Convention. At the time, there was an ongoing Constitution Convention tasked with drafting a new constitution for the Philippines. However, the declaration of martial law disrupted the convention's work. Some delegates were arrested, others went into hiding, and some even voluntary went into signified the erosion of democratic process during Marcos' rule. Marcos as dictator. With the imposition of martial law, Marcos effectively became a dictator, consolidating power. The passage suggests that Marcos personally influenced and even dictated some provisions of the new constitution, manipulating into extend his hold on power. This manipulation was a part of a broader effort to ensure his ability to rule indefinitely, bypassing any mechanism for democratic checks and balance and constitution approval. November 1972. Despite the disruption, the Constitutional Convention approved the proposed constitution on November 29, 1972. This document became known as the 1973 Constitution, which formalized the shift to a more authoritarian form of government. Next reporter, please.
Please, Ivy Rose.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivy Rose Amparo. I am the reporting for. The senator said he had received a top secret military plan given by Marcos himself to place Metro Manila and outlying areas under the control of the Philippine Military. constabulary as a prelude to martial law. Marcos was going to use a series of bombings in Metro Manila, including the 1971 Plaza Miranda bombing as a justification for his takeover and subsequent authoritarian rule. In his own diary, Marcos wrote on September 14, 1972, that he informed the military that he would proceed with proclaiming martial law. Even the U.S. Embassy in Manila knew as early as September 17, 1972, about Marcos' plan. On September 21, 1972, democracy was still functioning in the Philippines. Senator Benigno S. Aquino Jr. was still able to deliver a privileged speech. What would be his final one? In the Senate, Primit, Primitive Mijares, among others, recounted the functioning of the House of Representatives and the Senate, with committee meetings scheduled for that night. Senate and House leaders agreed not to adjourn on this day as earlier scheduled. They decided to extend their special. Dili na ako makita. Sige. Dili ni siya mao siguro. O kani. Okay na. They decided to extend their special season to a adjournment on September 23. That afternoon, a protest march in Plaza Miranda was sponsored by the Concerned Christians for Civil Liberties. The rally was attended by more than 30 civic, religious, labor, student, and activist groups, and a crowd of 30,000, and received coverage from newspapers, radio, and television. That's all.
So, to add some information about the slides, I have read by Miss Ivirus Amparo. Wait. So, okay, claro. So, in the Plaza Miranda bombing of 1971, several opposition politicians were injured during the political rally, and Marcos blamed communist rebels, but many suspected that, again, I think it was discussed by MJ Galpo, that it was an excuse to crack down on political enemies and to justify his authoritarian rule. And then Marcos documented in his diary that he was ready to declare the martial law as early as September 14, 1972. Even the United States Embassy had informed, showing that it was well-planned move and not a sudden emergency reaction. So, um, the Congress extended its special session on September 23, and on that same day, a massive rally took place at Plaza Miranda. The protest was joined by various sectors, religious, civic, students, and activist groups, showing the strong public resistance to Marcos' action. This rally, no, yeah, this rally was, again, as mentioned by Iver's Amparo, it was attended by 30,000 people. It shows that it was the active public dissent The involvement of media also proves that the freedom of expression was still alive just before Marcos would shut it all down under his martial law. That's all.
Next reporter, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, in his diary, Marcos wrote that he, together with members of his cabinet and staff, finished a preparation of proclamation 1081 and at 8 p.m. September 21. Of September 22, a day after the final speech of Ninoy Aquino, newspapers still came out. They featured the rally held the previous day in Plaza Miranda. Mijares recounted that Marcos was agi- agitated by a statement reporter in the Daily Express that if martial law were declared, Aquino said he would have to be arrested soon after or he would escape to join the resistance. So President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law in the Philippines through proclamation number 1081, which he and his team finished preparing on September 21, 1972. The next day, news still came out, but by September 23, the military had shut down media, stopped lights, and blocked international calls. So, next slide, please. On March 31, 1973, the Supreme Court issued its final decision in Haviliana v. Executive Secretary, which essentially validated the 1973 Constitution. This would be the final legitimizing decision with on the constitutionality of martial law in number L35546 September 17, 1974. The Supreme Court dismissed petitions for habeas corpus by ruling the martial law was a political question beyond the jurisdiction of the court, and that furthermore the court had already deemed the 1973 Constitution in full force and effect, replacing the 1935 Constitution. Martial law would officially end on January 17, 1981 with proclamation number 2045. Marcos, however, would reserve degree making powers for himself. So Marcos used martial law to arrest his opponents like Senator Ninoy Aquino and control the country. People tried to fight back by going to court, but the Supreme Court supported Marcos and said the new 1973 Constitution was valid. Martial law officially ended in 1981, but Marcos still kept a lot of power by making his own rules. That's all. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rocky Elmer Flores Elio. Today we're talking about authoritarian constitution. During the martial law period, under the President Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines, significant changes were introduced to the structure of government through the implementation of a new constitution. These changes mark the transition from a democratic to an authoritarian regime. The constitution was supposed to introduce a, a parliamentary style government where legislative power was vested in unicameral National Assembly, with members being elected to a 6 year term. The president was to be elected as the symbolic and ceremonial head of state chosen from the members of the National Assembly. So, the new constitution was intended to be establish a parliamentary system where legislative power resided in a unicameral National Assembly. Members were elected to 6 year term. For example, under the new 1973 Constitution, the legislative branch was reorganized into a unicameral National Assembly. This meant that instead of having a Senate and House of Representatives, there would be only one legislative body. While it was supposed to hold legislative power, in reality, it rarely convened and had limited independence, serving more to endorse Marcos' decisions than to debate them. Next is the president would serve a 6 year term and could be re-elected to an unlimited numbers of terms. Ex- exu- executive executive power was relegated to the prime minister, who was also the head of government and commander in chief of the armed force, who will also be elected from the National Assembly. So the president was envisioned as a symbolic and ceremonial head of state selected from among the National Assembly members. However, the president retained significant control and was allowed to serve a 6 year term with no limit on the number of terms. Although the Constitution defined the president as the ceremonial figure, Marcos retained a real political power, continuing to issue decrees and make executive decisions. For instance, for instance, Marcos declared himself both president and prime minister, allowing him to circumvent terms limits and maintain full control over the government without holding regular elections. President Marcos issued President Marcos issued presidential decree number 73, setting the date of the plebiscite to ratify or reject the proposed constitution of November 30, 1973. This plebiscite was postponed later on since Marcos feared that the public might vote to reject the constitution instead of a plebiscite. Citizen assemblies were held from January 10 to 15, 1973, where the citizens coming together and voting by hand decided on whether to ratify the constitution. Up, a plebiscite to approve the constitution was initially scheduled for November 30, 1973, but was postponed by Marcos to avoid potential rejection by the public. Instead of public plebiscite, citizen assemblies were held from January 10 to 15, 1973, where citizens vote by show of hands. These assemblies decided not only on the constitution but also on suspending the convening of the interim National Assembly, continuing martial law, or placing a moratorium of elections for several years. The president on January 17, 1973, issued a proclamation announcing that the proposed constitution has been ratified by an overwhelming vote of the members of the highly irregular questionable citizens assemblies. So on January 17, President Marcos proclaimed that the constitution has been ratified by overwhelming majority. Thought this process was widely seen as highly irregular, questionable. On January 17, 1973, Marcos publicly declared that the constitution has been ratified by overwhelming majority. Despite widespread doubts about the legitimacy of citizen assemblies, legal experts and opposition leaders questioned the legality and transparency of the process. But Marcos used the proclamation to solidify his rule, claiming that his actions were now backed by a constitutional mandate. The new authoritarian constitution allowed President Marcos to consolidate power further, bypass democratic processes, and extend his rule infinitely. These constitutional changes were instrumental in and maintaining martial law and suppressing democratic institution in the Philippines. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Francis Jacob Kuyag. So I'm gonna be discussing the continuation of that topic. So the Constitution was amended several times in 1976. Citizen assemblies, with many irregular signatures, once again decided to allow the constitution of martial law as well as approve by the amendments and intern Batasang Pambansa to substitute for the interim National Assembly. The president to also become the prime minister and continue to exercise legislative powers until martial law was lifted and authorized the president to legislate on his own on an emergency basis. So for the summarization of this is um so the authoritarian constitution in the Philippines was experienced a period of constitutional authoritarianism under President Ferdinand Marcos in 1965 to 1986. It is a complex and controversial era significantly shaped by the 1973 Constitution. This constitution, while ostensibly establishing a parliamentary system, it is served as a tool for consolidating Marcos' power and suppressing dissent. So, in the 1973 Constitution and the consolidation of power, it is initially elected in 1965. It is Marcos declared martial law in 1972, citing a communist insurgency as a justification. This effectively suspended in 1935 Constitution and paved the way for the 1973 Constitution. So while seemingly establishing a parliamentary system with a prime minister, the 1973 Constitution it granted the president extensive powers to including the ability to issue decrease, control the media, and suppress the opposition. So this allowed Marcos to maintain a firm grip on the power by passing legislative checks on the balances, and the ratification process itself was highly questionable and lacking to the legitimacy of a free and fair plebiscite. And that's all. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ron Vincent Kilaton. So I will be discussing the situation in the 1980s had been very turbulent as Marcos. A mass power discontent has also been burgeoning. The 1980s was one of the most politically unstable and emotionally charged decades in the Philippine history. This period was characterized by increasing authoritarianism, widespread public discontent, and ultimately a powerful, peaceful movement that lead to the downfall of a dictator. Marcos' authoritarian rule, Ferdinand Marcos had been president since 1965 and by the 1980s. He had already been in power for nearly 2 decades after declaring martial law in 1972. He ruled the country as a dictator through martial law was officially lifted in 1981. Marcos continued to hold strong control over the government, the military, and the media. Civil liberties were limited, political opponents were arrested, and government corruption was rampant while Marcos and his allies grew healthy and many Filipinos suffered from poverty, unemployment, and weakening economy. So as Marcos continued to amass power, dissatisfaction among the people grew. There were rising costs of reform, justice, and the restoration of democracy. This widespread frustration to set the stage for the explosive events that would follow. The assassination of Ninoy Aquino in August 1983, the situation dramatically changed. Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr., a former senator and one of the Marcos' most vocal critics, decided to return to the Philippines from exile in the United States despite warnings about threats his life. Aquino came back with the intention of helping restore democracy. Tragically, upon arrival at the Manila International Airport, he was assassinated while under heavy military escort. The shocking event outranked the Filipino public. Many suspected that the assassination was ordered by people within the Marcos government or military. Aquino's death became a powerful symbol of the oppressive regime and awakened a new level of political awareness and resistance. Among the people, massive protests and demonstration followed, and the opposition began to gain more unity and strength. The snap election and widespread fraud, as public pressure grew stronger and international criticism mounted, Marcos tried to prove his legitimacy by calling for snap election in 1986. These were special election held earlier than scheduled to supposedly show that still had a people support. His main opponent in the election was cousin Cory Aquino, the widow of Ninoy Aquino, who had become the face of the democratic movement. However, the election were plagued by massive electoral fraud. There were widespread reports of ballot tampering, intimidation, and manipulation of results, although Marcos was officially declared the winner. The results were not accepted by the public, the opposition, the Catholic Church, and even international observers. So the EDSA People Power Revolution, the situation reached a boiling point when a group of military rebels tried to stage a coup against Marcos, although the coup failed. It inspired the Filipino people to take to the streets in a historic act of peaceful defiance. From February 20 to 25, 1986, millions of Filipino people gathered along EDSA or Epifanio de los Santos Avenue in Manila. They brought food, prayed the rosary, sang songs, and held signs demanding Marcos step down. This movement, known as the EDSA People Power Revolution, was unique because it was non-violent. Despite the presence of tanks and soldiers, the protesters refused to fight. Instead, nuns offered flowers to soldiers and civilians stood in front of tanks to stop them from advancing. The peaceful resistance of the people combined with the withdrawal of support from military leaders and pressure from the United States eventually forced Marcos to flee country. He and his family were flown to Hawaii on February 25, 1986. So, Cory Aquino becomes president that same day. Corazon Aquino was sworn in as president of the Philippines. Her leadership marked the end of the Marcos dictatorship and the beginning of the restoration of democracy in the country. The rise to power showed the world that change could be achieved through peaceful united action. So, muna to, thank you.
So that's it. That's it. Thank you for listening. God bless you.